come not friends to steal away your hearts. I am no orator as Brutus is, for as you know me well, a plain blunt man, that love... Hi, and welcome back to Katie Can't Read. I'm Katie. I can read. And today I want to talk about the books I read in school. I'm going to list 10 that I actually loved and 5 that made me wish I had never signed up for the class. I read a lot of books in high school because I took exclusively honors and AP English classes. Some of them are the standard, everyone reads this in high school, and others are a little bit rare. I genuinely enjoyed a lot of my high school reading. It was actually harder for me to remember the books and stories that I hated than it was for me to remember the books that I loved. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Let's just right in. The first book I want to talk about is probably one of my top 5 favorite books of all time, George Orwell's 1984. This book is powerful. It's about a dystopian society that is under the oppression of Big Brother. Dark, it's gritty, there's a spot of hope in the middle. I think the ending of this book is one of the most brilliant endings in all of literature. This book is amazing. I love it. I wrote 9 essays on it my junior year of high school. The second book I'd like to mention is William Golding's The Lord of the Flies. The Lord of the Flies I read my freshman year. I read it over Thanksgiving break. I was one of the only people that enjoyed it. I thought the symbolism was fun. Haven't read it since, so I don't really remember the whole plot, but I know essentially that it's about a set of really spoiled rotten boys who they, by some unfortunate crash, either if it's airplane or ship, land on an island and have to try and survive. And things go exactly how you'd expect with a bunch of them. The third read I'd like to mention is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I read this my junior year in my drama class. It's such a fun, twisted play. It's about, for those of you that don't know The Crucible, it's about the Salem witch trials, which were perpetuated in this town by a girl named Abigail Williams, who is having an affair with John Proctor, and she wants his wife gone. And so she frames her for witchcraft. And that's pretty much the story. It's a really, when you read a play, for those of you that don't read plays, it takes like an hour. So honestly, if you ever like, I want to read a classic and I don't want to waste a lot of time, read The Crucible. 10 out of 10 would recommend. The fourth book I want to mention is kind of like the most stereotypical high school read, but it is overrated for a reason. One of the best books of all time, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. For those of you that don't know, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird follows the trial of an African-American man whose name I am blanking on. I should have done more research. Through the eyes of 11-year-old Scout, the daughter of his lawyer. Atticus Finch is one of the greatest characters in literary history. It has the most brilliant full circle story, and it has such an interesting look on 1960s racism through the eyes of a 12-year-old girl. It is a beautiful story, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird, which, where have you been? Read it. Fifth story I would like to mention is Medea by Euripides. Medea is a weird one to have read in high school, and I read it my sophomore year, and I loved it. It is a Greek tragedy that follows Medea, who is Jason of the Argo one, the original Argo's abandoned wife. And it is so crazy. Off the walls crazy. I don't even know what else to say because spoilers, but if you like a good crazy time, Medea is the way to go. I love it. It's so good. I'm going to lop the next 3 into one. So the next 3 I'm going to list are 3 plays by William Shakespeare. For those of you that don't know, I am a Billy Shakespeare slut. I love William Shakespeare. Maybe it's because I'm an actor. Maybe it's because I just appreciate a good play. But nevertheless, I love William Shakespeare. I love, a lot of people hate reading Shakespeare in high school, and I vibe with that, but once you finally start to understand the language, it is the funnest thing to read ever. The three I want to mention are Julius Caesar, Hamlet, and Macbeth. I know that Hamlet and Macbeth are like overrated. Who cares? They're accurately rated. They're excellent. Julius Caesar is my favorite. It is the story of Julius Caesar's assassination and all of the details, the background details that follow and precede it. So good. So good. Hamlet is about our Danish prince Hamlet after he is visited by the ghost of his father and is told to avenge him. It's really all you need to know. Hamlet is long and it is a lot, but it is so well written and so good. Third, we have Macbeth. I have read Macbeth 3 separate times in school and then like a 4th time in college acting school, you know. I love, 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 love Macbeth. It's the story of Macbeth gets a prophecy from some witches and decides that he's going to take this prophecy into his own hands and become king. It's wonderful. So good. If you haven't read it, read it. Next book I'm going to talk about is Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I love Brave New World for a similar reason that I loved 1984. It is a dark, dystopian novel that predicts a little bit of the future. But the way that it's different than 1984 is 1984 is overly dark, whereas Brave New World is dark in the subtext. On the surface, everything seems fine, but as you go through the layers of the story, it just gets messed up. So the plot of Brave New World is that in this dystopian society, everything is made to make people happy. They are born into castes, and they are trained since their birth to be happiest in their caste. My final favorite book I've read in school, I actually read in the 7th grade, and it's probably my favorite book of all time ever. It's The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I love The Outsiders. It's a great novel. One of the great American novels in my opinion. I think everyone should read this at least once in their lifetime. Outsiders follows Ponyboy Curtis and his times in the Greasers, which is his gang of friends. If you love found family, if you love good close friends, this is the book for you. Now, my 5 least favorite books I read in school. Some of these are books because I thought they were bad. Some of these are because I tortured myself and read them the night before. Some of these are objectively good books, but I just had a bad experience with them. The first worst is John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. A lot of people loved this book, okay? A lot of people love this book. I thought it was boring. I thought it was poorly written and boring and lame. I didn't like it. Didn't like it. Although there was a meme around my high school that any book anyone was reading, even if it was the math textbook, someone would walk up right behind them and give the big spoiler at the end. So for those of you that don't know what Of Mice and Men is about, Of Mice and Men follows George and Lenny as they search for work in California. Okay, I'm sorry for this one, but my second least favorite is The Diary of Anne Frank. I know. But when I was in the 8th grade, all I could remember was thinking it was boring. Especially when the year before we read The Outsiders in school. Can you imagine that back to back? Exactly. For those of you that don't know, is the actual diary Anne Frank kept while she was in hiding during the Second World War. If you're into history and Anne Frank as a person, highly recommend. If you're like me and you didn't really care about her prepubescent thoughts, then it's not for you. The third book I'm going to mention that I didn't like is Night by Elie Wiesel. Night. Night is, I'll give it this. It is a beautiful book, really well written, but for the stage of life I was in when I read this book, it was the worst thing I could have read at the time. Night is the nonfiction account of Ellie's real life time in Auschwitz. And it is exactly as dark and terrible as you hope it would be. And I was not in the right headspace for it when I was a sophomore in high school. This next one I hate so much. I hate it with a burning passion. I hope no one ever has to read this in their entire life. It is Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Technically speaking, it's a poem. But it is the longest 15-page poem I have ever read. And I hated it. Maybe it's because I read it in one night. Perhaps. Perhaps it's also because it is the most terrible thing ever. It's not even, like, the symbolism is not that good. And the writing is really hard to understand, and I hate it. I hate it, 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 I hate it. Sometimes I think about the albatross, and I literally start getting shivers. I have war flashbacks to this poem. Don't recommend it to anyone. Don't read it unless you're forced to. And the final book that I hated, that I feel bad about saying I hated, is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Frankenstein is objectively a great novel. It is one of the greatest novels ever written, objectively. However, when you read it in 3 hours, the night before you have to write an essay on it and do all of the homework attached to that book in 3 hours, it is not a pleasant book to look back on. I cannot tell you what happens in this book. I cannot. I don't remember. It does have interesting symbolism about, like, life and stuff. But when you try to read it in 3 hours, the night before it's due, it doesn't sit well, you know? It does not sit well. Anyway, thank you for watching. Sorry this was kind of chaotic, but please share what your favorite and least favorite things you read in school were. I love to vent about the similar things, or maybe find things that people hated that I hated as well that I didn't list, or people hated that I loved, or things that I loved that people hated. Like, I love these conversations. Let's discuss. What did you read in high school, or middle school, or elementary school, or college? What are you reading that's classic and terrible? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next chapter.